Listen, let me fill y'all in on something. As a person that has worked, in the federal system, as a CO for many years and has actual experience, but speaking as a private citizen, that video that Dubs did where he was using the words of this black dude to say that blacks are afraid of Mexicans in the federal system, I'm calling cap on that. I have the actual experience. I've broken up the knife fights, the melees, the disturbances, all that stuff. I've been there. I've been in the fire with it. So I have experience talking about this, and I'm not going to invalidate what that dude said because that could be his truth. You know what I'm saying? That could be his reality. But I would say, in my opinion, that would be the exception and not the rule because, I got to be careful what I say, even though I'm a private citizen, I'm speaking as a private citizen, I still have to be careful with what I say. But I can tell you, I've met blacks from all over the country, right, that have no idea what West Coast politics is like. Midwest, East Coast, down South. Their experiences in jails and prisons are going to be vastly different than people that do time in the state of California, right? And so there could be maybe institutions where the blacks might be afraid of the Hispanics. I don't know. But I can definitely tell you that is not the norm. That would just be an exception. And even though I've done all my time on the West Coast in California, when I talk to inmates later all over the country, because when they get into those fights or they get into the melees, those brawls, those riots, they get sent all the way to the West Coast on a disciplinary transfer. So all the different things that have happened over there, where they had to scatter the inmates to different places, we're going to find out and we're going to know about it, whether it be from intel briefings or it could just be inmate.com. So trust me, even though I've never worked in the Midwest, East, or down South, we still know what happens when those people come over on a disciplinary transfer. So I think, in my opinion, Dubs, he has this superiority situation concerning race, and he wants to push this elitism thing, and it's really not cool. And I want to make it clear, I'm not doing this video to stick up for black inmates or to defend them, because if you look at some of my videos, you know that I be roasting the black inmates at times. I'm not on here to stick up for any race. I'm going to just tell it from my perspective to give a little clarity, because there's a lot of people that don't know. Dubs, as he self-admitted, he's never done time in the federal system, and there's other people that provided commentary. They haven't done time, right? But let me give you some examples, right, well, first, let me address the guy's statements, right? So this guy, I don't know where he did his time, and that could have been true, right? But when it comes to the East Coast, Midwest, down South, you have what they call man time. And when you're on man time, that just means that, hey, you're going to do your time. You're not going to hide behind what they believe, hide behind a car. If you have an issue with somebody, you're going to address that issue. You're going to go in that cell or do whatever, and then you're going to go about your business, right? I've met numerous black inmates that have come from, again, the other regions of the country, thinking that they can do man time in California and finding out, with a rude awakening, you cannot do that. And I'll give you there's several examples, but I'll give you this one. I remember there was this black dude. He was a Muslim and he was, I think, a blood. I don't know how he was a Muslim in the blood, but whatever. So he was telling me, we were chopping up a little bit, and he was telling me like, yeah, I was getting into it with the Southsider, and because he was in lockdown, right? So he was like, I got into it with the Southsider, and I guess it was on the flats in the unit, everybody could see. And so it got a little intense, and the black dude said to the Southsider, hey, we can go ahead and go in that cell, and, we can take care of business. And he said it was like just from the cartoons or the movies where the music comes to a screeching halt, and everybody just like stops and turns to look. He said that's what it was. And he said immediately somebody came to him and was like, whoa, hold on. So they went and they hollered at him, and it was like, hey, we can't do that stuff in the West Coast, right? We don't get down like that in California. If you go, all of us go, and it's going to be a car crash. So just off the top, right, there's a lot of black inmates that will try to be on that man time in California, but just based on the politics, you cannot do that. Now, one thing I can say, right, with traveling around the United States more, it's really opened my eyes, because a lot of people don't understand in the feds, right, You're taking in people from all over the world, and the stuff is the institutions are all across the United States and Puerto Rico. So I've gone to other areas where, because I would hear like numerous black dudes, right, when they're from, again, the other regions and they have to do time in California, they hate doing time in California because they like, man, y'all more racist in California than we are down south. And they make that known. But even with that, their culture is totally different from West Coast culture, right? And it took me going down south and traveling through the South to kind of really understand that. Because dudes, you know what I'm saying, down south or the Midwest, whatever, they grew up going to the pond fishing, using tadpoles to catch fish, skinning the fish, hunting, doing whatever, farm life, whatever, right? They're used to doing that stuff. They didn't grow up in the gang environment and the gang culture like people in California. So their mindset is going to be a lot different. So again, I don't know that inmate. I never met him. Maybe that could have been a situation, right? Where maybe at that institution or whatever, that region, maybe it was a situation of you have all these dudes. They're not in gangs. They're not involved in that. Now they could be violent or, they could have, the street element where it's just not gang related, but it's maybe neighborhood related. But that's the only thing I'm guessing about it. So again, there are situations, because trust me, man, you have the dudes that, again, come to California. They don't like the gang politics. They don't want to get involved in that stuff because that's not part of their upbringing. But on the other hand, people that grew up on the West Coast or in California, we know, gang activity, street life like the back of, our hands because it's just all over the place and it affects so many people. So my guess, and it's only a pure guess, if this did happen with this brother, and again, I'm not invalidating it, maybe that was just a situation where with his particular car or maybe the few blacks that were there, they were just like, look, we ain't getting involved in that stuff. We didn't grow up doing all that. And if that is the case, I get that. However, to say across the board, that's the norm, that is not the norm. It's not. And again, trust me, I've seen it where, again, when things pop off on the East Coast or down south or whatever, again, a lot of them, they get shipped over to the West Coast for disciplinary transfer. So we find out, okay, the DCs, they got into it with the Southsiders, or the DCs, man, got into it with the Dirty South, whatever it is, right? You're going to hear about it, inmate.com or any type of information that's disseminated, which I will never discuss on here, right? But it just is what it is. And I'm going to give you another example, right? There's this prison car, right, in the feds, and I'm going to do a video on them, the DC blacks. And the DCs, they've gone to war, from what I understand. It's all on YouTube and all that stuff. They've gone to war with Southsiders. But one thing about the DCs, and this is not to stick up for no blacks, because the DCs, they definitely have their shortfalls. And I'm talking about this from the perspective of a private citizen. And I'll kind of explain how their actions have affected me just being a black CO in that system, right? But anyway, so you have the DCs. They have a reputation for being vicious, very, very violent, and just unforgiving, right? That's just what they're known for, right? And even in those situations, right, when you're dealing with them, I ain't never heard of a situation where DC's back down from anything. I've never heard of a situation where any West Coast gangs or cliques, but me personally, I've never seen it, right? But again, it can happen, but it's not the rule. It's definitely the exception. Now, let me shift gears real quick and I'm going to end this video. When it comes to, I'm talking about the total score between the different cars, factions, gangs, whatever you want to call it. Once you tally up the scores from the different instances or incidents that's transpired between the other cars, nobody is undefeated, right? Just purely based on statistics, the ideologies and the things that this Mr. Dubs dude tries to spread about, his own superior feelings about race, no car and no race is undefeated. Again, I've seen it where, like this one black dude, I can't go into much details, but there's this black inmate. He had dropped 2 Southsiders in the unit. It was going up. He dropped two Southsiders, the blacks got the upper hand on that one. However, there was a time where the blacks got, they got handled and it looked embarrassing, right? You're going to win some, you're going to lose some. Same with the whites. The whites can come up on the upper hand on something and they may lose on something. The Pisces might come up on the other hand. They might come up on the upper hand, but then they might lose. But in order to even begin to have a baseline to even try to say that this car is like the best car and everybody fears them or majority fears them and don't want to mess with them, you would have to first start with a foundation of like being undefeated. And it's just the way it works. Mike Tyson, he was a great fighter, a magnificent, had just crazy power. He wasn't undefeated. Muhammad Ali, he was not undefeated. You know what I'm saying? So it happens, right? But just get this notion out of your mind that for whatever reason that the blacks are afraid of the Mexicans, or even if somebody says the Mexicans are afraid of the blacks, even if you have black inmates, if they get on there and they talk about how, because, you hear all the rumors, and even Dubs has brought that up in some of his videos where he's talked about where black people say, oh, we can take on a bunch of Mexicans at once. All we got to do is just stay on our feet and, one black dude can take on 5, 6, 7. Now, have I ever seen that where one black inmate can take on 5, 6, or 7? I've never seen that. I'm not saying it's impossible. I just haven't seen that, right? But even in those situations, right, you're going to win some and you're going to lose some, period. But don't, I'm telling you, man, this is why I wanted to venture out a little more to start doing some content as a private citizen concerning how some of the things go within the federal system, because who knows how many people watched that video that Dubs did or any other reaction videos, and who knows how many people are going to walk away with the impression that the blacks were afraid of the Mexicans. And again, it's not true. Nobody is afraid of anybody. I've sat out at the hospital where Southsiders have been stabbed up, blacks have been stabbed up, whites, Pisces, all of them, where they've been out there, got messed up in fights. And I've talked to all of them at a certain point. And I've never heard any of them say, oh yeah, man, them people, they weak. Oh yeah, man, they sorry. They look at them as a worthy opponent. And when you get into the book of the art of, one of the things it talks about is you can never underestimate, your opponent. You just can't do that, because if you underestimate your opponent, that can be to your detriment, because you start slipping, you're not staying on your P's and your Q's, you're not, in that ready position, always ready to go, right? But yeah, I don't want to go on too long with this video because, I don't really get involved in a lot of the back and forth with some of the prison genre creators. But with this situation, I was like, you know what? I could talk about this, right? And again, I'm not defending blacks. I'm not doing any of that stuff. I'm just making it clear that, to my knowledge, from my experience working with inmates from all over the country, and more specifically with this video, dealing with blacks and Mexicans, from all over the place, including the blacks that are from the other regions that get transferred, I've never seen a situation where they were afraid to go. I've never, ever seen that. But again, you could have instances where you have dudes down south, they could be at a particular institution and they didn't grow up, with having handguns on them to go around and shoot people. They might have went around hunting deer or boar or something, or fishing in the lake and all that kind of stuff, but they weren't involved in that criminal element, or they weren't involved in that structured gang environment. So to some of them, I'm imagining, I can't speak for them, I'm just imagining that if something like that does happen, then maybe they're just like, man, I don't want to mess with them. Well, I'm not a gang member. And I've heard it numerous times where you got people that, again, from other regions that come to California and they're like, man, I'm not on no gang time. But then they realize you're going to have to click up with somebody, even though you don't like the gang rules and all that stuff. In Rome, do as the Romans do, right? So hopefully you got some kind of edification out of this video. I'm going to try to crank out some more content. I've just been really, really busy lately. Had a lot going on, but hopefully you got something out of this video. So to the next one, holla at your boy.